Hey, and thanks for joining me here today at CVC Coaching, doing another podcast today. And today I'm bringing you a new member of our team here at CVC Coaching. Hope you've been able to keep up with us because we're adding some new people. And the whole reason for this, so we can better serve our client base, better identify what's going on, and offer the services that we need to offer out to folks like you that are giving us the courtesy and honor to being with us today. So today, I'm bringing to you a new member of the team. He's kind of been working with me for a couple years. He's been doing some writing, some editing. He's been working with me, and actually, he's kind of one of my mentors in life. He was on one of the boards when I was president of CSI. He was actually one of my board members, and that's where I got to know him really good. So when I started coaching, it's like this fellow was somebody that was a positive influence on me at one time. And he's been there for me sometimes in good, sometimes in bad. So in a way, even though I'm coaching, hey, I rely on people like that. So today I'd like to introduce you if you've never met him or you may have done business with him previously. And that is Greg Polikow. And Greg comes to us from a really unique background, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So Greg, welcome. I appreciate you joining me today.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Jerry.
Well, that is good. So anyway, like I was telling people, you're kind of experienced in this coaching game. When you were working at Copperfield, you coached people there and you worked with people in the industry. Can you tell me a little bit about what you did there and how that's preparing you for the job ahead with our clients?
I would say that my favorite part of my job at Copperfield was going out and working with our customers in the field. Because as you know, it's sort of been part of Bob Daniels' whole approach to this business for years, and that is train our customers, give them all the support they could have. So while I was at Copperfield, that was my favorite thing to do. I would go out and I would do much of the kind of thing that you're doing now, meet with customers in their offices, meet with customers with their business, get to know their business, and make suggestions for how they could improve it. And from my experience, just about everybody needed help.
Yep.
They all wanted help. They all wanted the input, and it was a real joy of mine to give that for them. But training and teaching has been part of my life for forever, and it's what I enjoy doing the most.
There's nothing like being a teacher, coach, whatever somebody wanted to call us, an instructor, and just seeing the people you work with reach their dreams. Does that give you a good feeling, Greg, when you see that?
It really does. What you see, and I know you've experienced this, Jerry, what you see is the light go on. And when you see the light go on, you think, wow, that's really cool. They got it. And then it changes things for them. And, it's funny because sometimes you need that objective perspective in your business because you're so close to it, you just can't see it anymore. And when somebody points out even the simplest thing to them, it's like all of a sudden, wow, they see something that they hadn't seen before. They understand their own business better than they had before, and it could be something very simple.
Yep. And, we've talked about this for a while and, putting this program together and adding you to the team. I told you when I was, that Cheryl, she was coming in and she's got her role she's going to fill. And, she just completed her Ziegler training about how to be, a coach, how to instruct people. So let me ask you a question, Greg. What makes you that great teacher, that coach? What can you bring to people?
What I can bring is a wide range of teaching experience. I have taught in colleges, in high schools, in middle schools. I have taught, all the ages of of students that would fall into those categories, and they're all different. And what's interesting to me is where I learned the most about teaching was teaching in the middle school, teaching 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. That to me was really eye-opening because you had to be very specific. You had to really understand what they could do, what they couldn't do, what they understood, what they didn't understand, and how to present information to them that caught their attention, made it interesting for them to even listen, and then reinforce it. And I think that's what I bring. Plus all the training that I did working for Copperfield, and I've certainly done a lot of instructional courses during the time I worked for Copperfield at different venues like the Southeast Convention, the California Convention, and the New York State Convention. I've taught courses in all those. I've taught about sales and marketing and customer service in ways that that I think made it really, really clear and easy to understand, because the main thing that I do is I keep it simple.
Yep. And you got to do that. It's like you and I, we were talking, and a lot of times, and I think it's problems that we have a lot in business, is we have people from so many backgrounds, and they come to work for us. And a lot of times we've got to understand all these different learning styles, because that's what you have. And in fact, I taught one class a couple of years ago, and it was about the various learning styles that different people have. So give me, what's your secret of teaching? I mean, one of the places we're going to use you and where we really see you're going to be a real asset is working with staff members, technicians, maybe it's office staff or whatever, to help these people individually, kind of help them make their dreams and get a vision. So what's your secret of working with people when we have such vastly different learning styles with what we're working with?
Well, I don't know that it's much of a secret, but I can tell you this. You have to really understand where the people are that you're talking to. You have to understand what interests them. You have to understand what excites them. You have to keep their interest. You have to make it fascinating. Not just, you don't just walk in and say a bunch of words and then walk out and think that anybody got it. Because if you do that, you're not a teacher, you're a lecturer. To be a teacher, you have to constantly be reading your audience and understanding who they are and when you're getting to them and when you're not.
I understand completely. And that's kind of where it's at, And one of the things I think you and I have discovered is what you're bringing there, which is an ongoing. That's part of what our vision is here. And we're talking about ways to make this ongoing, how we're going to do, how we see live virtual training one-on-one. But like you said, the important thing is they've got to know you first. I know in my own style of teaching, when I work with people, they've got to get to know me. And I'm a hard individual to get to know everybody that knows me. But when you get down to that, that's what you got to do to touch each person. And that's where I think you're going to be super in this. Well, anyway, I'll share with you my mission when I started CVC Coaching. And what it is to help people build their businesses where they can reach those dreams they had the day they started that business. So give me a little bit about your ideas. How do you see that you're going to approach this so the winner is going to be both the business owner, who's our client, and their team, where they all win? How do you visualize that coming into perspective, Greg?
Well, there's two things, and you're right. There's the business owner and what he or she needs to learn about their own business and how they need to look at their own business. And I think I definitely can help with that. I can definitely show them, because it's so much easier to come in from the outside and look at somebody's business and say, well, these things you're not doing so well, these things you probably shouldn't be doing at all, and here's some improvements you can make immediately. Because we don't lose the vision of the forest for the trees. We see the whole thing, and that's the benefit of coming in from the outside. And once the business owner gets it, then the next thing is to make sure that everybody on the staff, everybody on the team gets it also. And that's, those two things are sometimes different processes, as you know, because you're talking to different people. The business owner has a very strong inherent interest in getting it right. The people that work for the business owner, yeah, they want that too, but they're maybe not quite as motivated, since for them, it's a job. And what you want to do is show them how, yeah, it's a job, but it is a great job, and here's how it can be greater. Here's what I can tell you that will make it more fulfilling for you to do the things that really work in this business. Here are the tools that I can give you, because it really is about giving tools. A lot of the times, it's not enough to say, well, you just got to close more sales. No, you got to give them the tools to do that in a way that they feel comfortable with. Otherwise, It's just blah, blah, blah.
Yep, and that's exactly what I see so often, Greg. And that's why I think you're going to be so great at this. I know when you worked on the board and you had a very unique insight in the way you shared things with people. And, one of the things, and I didn't even know this till a couple weeks ago, I based my decision of bringing you into our team here because I knew what you right. I felt you got the right stuff. And then lo and behold, I found out you had a master's degree from Harvard University. It's like, holy God, this is unreal. I got a guy with a Harvard degree, not just a Harvard, but a master's degree on my team. So, so tell me a little bit about why you did that and what that enables you to bring to the table.
Well, the reason I did that, the reason I bothered to get a master's degree in education is because for me, education was so close to my heart that I knew whatever else I did, I would always be involved in education at some level. Because let's face it, it's all about education. It's all about teaching people. The good business owner knows this. The good business owner understands that his clients, his customers, need to be taught. You can't take anything for granted. You can't assume they know anything. And they need to be taught in a way that they understand it, that they don't feel threatened by it, that they don't feel confused by it. That to me, it's like everything is an education. Everything is. Everything is teaching. And when you realize that, then you take it seriously enough to go and learn as much as you can about teaching.
Yep. Well, one guy that you were around, and the bad thing is there's people in the industry we're in today that really don't know this guy because, hey, when we started, some of these guys weren't even born at that point. But one of the guys, and I tell a lot of people, there's been a few true visionaries. You had the ability and the opportunity to work with one of them, and that was Bob Daniels, or as we called Sooty Bob. But Bob Daniels, when I came into this business, Bob was already doing it. I can remember getting Bob's business tips on a cassette tape back in those days. And I can remember I think one of the things that took Copperfield really to a plateau was Bob helped people succeed in business. Whether you were his customer or not, he helped you. And he would put on workshops and do all kinds of different things. But, I've known Bob from a distance. Hey, you've been up close with him and worked with him. So can you tell me a little bit about working with Sooty Bob?
Yeah, Bob, Bob is one of the most unique and creative people I've ever met. And I say that perfectly honestly. I don't work for the guy anymore. We've been close friends for years. But he never failed to astonish me about several things. One is his grasp of what needed to be done for the customer. Because I can remember we'd come into a management meeting and we'd come up, the team may have come up with some ideas about changes we could make to make things better. And Bob would always say, okay, but how is this going to affect the customers? Is it to their benefit or is this just to our benefit? And, it was an excellent question, and most of us hadn't even thought about that. And now we think, oh, yeah, well, maybe we've got to go back and restructure this a little bit. He always knew what the bottom line was. He always had a great sense of what people would respond to. He was the most instinctive marketer I ever met. And I don't know, part of that was just built into his genes, and part of it was because he took a real interest in it. He read voraciously, he studied it voraciously, and he understood what worked. And not a lot of guys do. So to me, what he did, both for the industry and the company that he structured in Copperfield, was so unique and so interesting that I could never fail but sort of be in awe.
Yep, and that's it. So would you rate him as one of the role models for business for people to look at, somebody that thinks like the customer?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I feel really privileged that I had such a long inside look at this wonderful company, and how it was run when Bob was running it, and that I feel like believe me, that was a much more important education for me than getting a master's degree at Harvard was.
Yeah, well, one of the things I used to remember about Bob is Bob would go to a trade show, and Bob would sit there, and when you told Bob something, so he would remember, he always carried a voice recorder. And what he would do is after you got done talking, he would kind of turn around and make a note into that voice recorder. And, to keep up so he didn't forget, so he could remember what was said. And, and I got to think that Bob was a guy that truly thought like his customers. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He sometimes would suggest things that we do for customers. And I'll just give you this small example because it's kind of cute. We were in a meeting one day. This was years back. And Bob said, I want to start putting little candies in all the boxes we send out from our warehouse to our customers. Everything we ship out, I want some of these little candies going. They'll be in Copperfield wrappers. They'll have little smiley faces on them or whatever. And I thought to myself, well, okay, but I don't see what this is going to do. This seems like kind of you got to be out of ideas to do something like this. Well, the funny thing is, it was a huge hit. It was a huge hit with our customers. It was such a big hit that if customers got a box without candy in it, they would call us and say, hey, I think somebody at the warehouse is taking our candy because we didn't get it in the last shipment. And I would have never imagined that. But Bob instinctively knew this was a home run.
Yep. So whose idea was that? Was the Harley Davidson giveaway his idea?
That was my idea.
That was your idea.
Yep.
But you're not a Harley rider.
You probably remember this, Jerry. The first thing we gave away was a Dodge Power Wagon.
Yep.
Remember that? And we brought it to the show. We drove it. We drove it on the floor. We shipped it around the country to all the shows. People loved it. So, and my thinking was, they had done something like this before in the past. They had tried a giveaway, and it was related to how much liner you bought. And I thought, well, if you're going to do that, 90% of the customers, 95% of the customers are going to know, well, I don't have a chance to win that because I'll never buy as much as these guys that are bigger than me, so it's not an incentive. So my thinking was, it's got to be something that everybody who's one of our customers feels they have a chance to win. And so we set it up so that it was based upon sale size. So if you called in, for every $250 on an order, your name would go in the hat automatically. If it was $500, it would go in the hat twice, like that. So everybody felt like they were a player. Everybody had an opportunity to win. And it's really hard to measure the effect of something like that. But Jim Gillum asked me once, Jim Gillum, the editor of, what is it, Chimney Sweep News or Chim News, or I can't remember.
Chimney Sweep News.
Chimney Sweep News. He said, Greg, what do you think? Do you think this has had any impact on sales? And I said, Jim, I really don't know at this point. I haven't got any way to measure that. And Jim said, well, I can tell you this. I've heard from several guys in the field that they switched their business to Copperfield because of this.
Really?
And that was a really interesting revelation for me.
Well,
but yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that. We all did. We all enjoyed it.
Well, I can remember when I got my first talking newsletter from Sooty Bob, and it was a cassette tape. And Sooty Bob started talking about selling chimney caps, okay? And I can remember I had just started my business. And he told me about selling chimney caps. And he told me about putting gasket on doors and dampers. So I sat down and figured it up. Okay, what's it going to cost me to put these 6 chimney caps on the truck and the stove gas and a couple dampers? And you came by my office a few, years later, and we're sitting here with hundreds of thousands of dollars in inventory, way too many hundreds of thousands. But I can still remember that day that I had to, and I got excited enough to bring those products in based on that talking newsletter. Really, it was unreal.
It was a brilliant idea even to have a talking newsletter, and it shows you one thing about Bob. He likes that personal connection. It wasn't enough to send a letter out or some kind of printed marketing material. He wanted people to hear his voice because that's where he was really at his best.
Yeah.
It was a brilliant idea.
Well, one of these days, I want you to pass on, because I know you see Bob. I really want to share a stage with him one day in my life. I never got an opportunity with Dave Pomeroy, and I would really love to do something with Bob one day. So pass it along. So tell me, what's your passions in life, Greg? What do you do? What's your interest? You're always on me. You tell me I work too much, Jerry, blah, 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 and we talk about that. You're one of the people that said, Jerry, you got to go smell the roses. You got to do this, do that. So what does Greg do to smell the roses? Tell me, what is Greg's drive?
Well, there are a lot of things I enjoy doing, like any of us, but my hobby, my real passion for what I do as extracurricular activity is riding motorcycles. And I've been doing that since the 60s. And I just love it. I've never outgrown it. I've never gotten bored with it. It still is a perfectly enjoyable, thrilling kind of experience for me. I can get on a motorcycle, and whatever mood I'm in when I got on the motorcycle, within 2 minutes of going, I'm totally happy, It's just amazing how fulfilling that is for me. And I think it's good for people to have something like that. I mean, I don't know, it's going to be different for everybody else. Some people wouldn't go near a motorcycle, but something that automatically makes you happy as soon as you do it, the minute you start it, that's a great hobby to have, don't you think?
I think so too. In fact, I got one of my clients. He's really into riding, and a few more. Like a bunch of those guys get together. They went up to South Dakota a couple years ago, rode through South Dakota, and I actually had a buffalo. I charged them going through South Dakota, and I knocked one off the motorcycle. It was pretty. They videotaped. They made it. They put it on Facebook. So, like I say, you never know what's around that next bend. But I'm presuming, knowing you, that you ride very cautiously and foresight ahead. Would that be right?
Well, yeah, and the thing about riding motorcycles or flying airplanes, which I did for years for Copperfield, is you really have to develop your skills to the highest level and keep them there. It isn't anything I take for granted. And every time I go out on my motorcycle, I'm always practicing something, maybe several things, so that it's absolutely sharp. And it was the same thing with flying. If you're going to fly, especially if you're going to fly in weather, if you're going to do instrument flying, you have to stay way on top of your game to do that. And we've seen some sad experiences of people who we know that bought airplanes, got licenses, and didn't stay on top of it, and some unfortunate outcomes.
Yep, that's true. So tell me this. Let's go back to business, Greg. What we're talking about here is, how do we take teams of people, our staff members of our clients, and we're going to take them to a whole new level. So, what makes a good student? And I may just change the way of asking this. What kind of people are going to benefit from what you do, what I do, what we as a team do? Because that's what I've got here, is a team of people, and I'm really glad that you're part of that team now. So what makes a good student? What do people have to have? What's that basis that we can help them take and build that phenomenal group of rock stars I talk about?
Well, sometimes, what makes a good student, obviously, is somebody who's open to learning. That was another thing that I loved about Bob Daniels. He was always open to learning. He was always curious about everything, things that had to do with business and things that had nothing to do with business. So the desire to learn and to grow has to be there. And if it isn't, then it's our job to put it there. And I think a good teacher can do that. A good teacher can inspire somebody to learn that was never really interested in learning, because they can make it exciting, they can make it interesting, they can make it fun, they can pull that out of the students. So I think you've got to have that quality in the student, and the teacher, if it's not there, the teacher's got to be able to put it there.
Yep. I think you've been kind of, like I said, you've been in the background working with me, doing some editing, writing articles for me a lot and all those kind of things. And I think it's kind of, I think when I started CBC coaching, you've probably been pretty surprised where it's went to, and now, hey, you're now part of it. But
it's pretty exciting.
It is, and like I tell people, it's the drive, it's the passion. There's nothing better than watch that look come over somebody's eyes. Hey, I get it. I can do that. I know I can do this. And I watch this with business owners as they tackle their challenges, and and they get it. It's like, I can do this. And that's what I tell everybody. There's only one thing stopping them. It's the guy in the mirror. And that's so often what stops our people. And that's what we're building these teams to do and go to such a new level in business. But, you know, one of the things, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Let me interrupt for a second, because I just want to say it's about them reaching their goals for their business. But something else happens in the process, something on the personal level that lets them realize a whole different level of ability, a whole different level of skill that they may never have known lies in there. And that when they discover that, when they discover what their abilities are, when they put them to use, that is a huge growth experience for them. And that to me is as rewarding as seeing their businesses prosper, because the two go hand in hand, I think.
Yep, and I agree with you. And it's like I mentioned it. Mark Stone a while ago. One of the things that Mark tells people when he teaches is you're going to fail at times, but what you've got to do is always fail forward. We're going to fail, and that's what's the difference. I think it was Vince Lombardi said the loser's the guy that falls down and just don't get up. The winner's the guy that falls down and he gets back up and goes right at it again. Then that's what we're trying to build here. We're trying to build winners that get up after their failures. So
I want to tell you something, Jerry. I had this conversation with my son, many years back. He was looking for his first job, and he said something to me. I said, I don't remember exactly what the conversation was, but he said, "Dad, I don't want a dead-end job." And I said, "Jesse, there are no such things as dead-end jobs. There's just dead-end people, because any job can lead to all kinds of unexpected outcomes when your attitude is right about it. But if you think there are dead-end jobs, you're probably never going to be successful in any job."
Yep, and I run into a lot of my friends. I'm in my 60s now, and I see people that we'll run into them. Ran into a couple with you this morning at breakfast. Went to a local restaurant, had breakfast, and, as we were walking out, met some friends. And it was like, said, yeah, and talked about the man and the couple said, well, he's retired now. And I told him, I said, I have no desire to retire. I'm having too much fun doing what I'm doing. I would not, I can't consider myself ever retiring because I don't know what I would do except wither and die. So, it's like that. I don't foresee that in my future at any point as long as I'm physically, mentally able. I don't visualize I'm going to retire because it holds no interest to me. What about you?
No, it's that old saying about when you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And that's how I feel. When we're doing something that we really enjoy and it's really fulfilling for us, it's not work anymore. It's just enjoyable.
Yep. So do you still fly those planes? I know you used to. You never flew on commercial airlines. I remember we was at Board Beach. You said one time you wanted to ride to the airport. And next thing I knew, you had me take you over to the other side where the little planes are. And it's like, what in the world is this? He said, well, I flew a plane up here. It's like, oh, you fly yourself. And I think you even, and that's how you got around a lot, flying around the country. So what was that like to be up there?
That's how I traveled all the time. And, the benefit of it is you go when you want to go, you come back when you want to come back, you're not on an airline schedule, and you can go into airports that are very close to where you want to be rather than some, large international airport that is a pain in the neck to get in and out of. So there was a great deal of benefit in it for me. And I love to fly. The downside of it is it's all on you. You've got to keep track of all the things that you let airline pilots keep track of, and namely that's weather and dealing with all the issues of weather and the mechanical issues in an airplane. But I got to say I felt very, very much at home in the cockpit of an airplane, and I loved it. And when it was over, because there was a point at which the people that were managing Copperfield thought it was just getting too expensive. When it was over, and I just kind of walked away, and that was it.
Yep. If I remember right, didn't you have I remember one time you had an experience, didn't you, in the air?
Yes, I did. It's so interesting because it was right after, I think, a national show. I think it was the one at Hershey a few years ago. I can't remember for sure, but I think so. And maybe it was a regional show. It was something related to business, and I had flown several people in, and when it was time to go, it was winter time, and I had left the plane near Hershey someplace. I can't remember which city it was in. And we went out and we got in, we took off, and we had weather. We had some snow in the clouds. We were up in the clouds. It was an instrument flight plan, and we were up in the clouds, and we were heading west, and we were over the Alleghenies, and the engine stopped. I mean, it didn't cough or sputter. It just stopped. There was no warning at all. And I won't even tell you what the first thing out of the mouth of my passenger was, but it was what you might imagine. And, you know, we managed to get it down safely, and when I landed at Allegheny County Airport, the plane was absolutely covered with ice. And I'm always happy that I walked away from that one. But, you know, in 30 years of flying, that was the only real emergency I ever handled.
Yeah, I know. We have, you and I have even talked about that, you know, over the years, you know, about how things like that happen and all. So anyway, like I said, you know, I am it's such a good feeling to have you on this team with me and offer your services. And I see where we're going to be taking people. You know, we're already got people that actually you're already getting ready to start up with some people, doing some training and some different things. We're getting your programs ready. And we've got our summit coming up in a couple weeks, and you're going to be there in Indianapolis, connecting with old friends and, you know, where you can see what's going on and, you know, seeing what we can offer as part of our team. So what would you add to that? How are you looking at this? Is this a new chapter in Greg's life? Is this something Greg has always?
This is definitely a new chapter in that it's going to be doing, not that I haven't done this before, but this is what I'm exclusively doing. And in terms of the seminar, the meeting in Indianapolis, it sounds really fabulous. And you know, there's a lot of meetings for people to go to, but this one sounds like it's going to be incredibly productive. And I would just say anybody out there that hasn't planned to go to this probably should put it on their calendar, because it's going to be one of those things you don't want to miss.
It is. You know, this is something I've envisioned all my life. Since I've been in this, you know, I've worked with regional groups, and you know, I was a committee chair for North Carolina Chimney Sweep Association, put Southeastern conventions together when they started, involved in the national level and all that, even at HPBA, WHA when it was WHA. But, you know, this is one I've been able to put together on my own. And, you know, and I brought this, I think it's a phenomenal group of speakers. We've got 9 speakers coming in. And, I mean, it's like bringing in Ellen Rohr and these kind of things. And, you know, and everything is put in. This is not a 3-day event to sell anyone anything. This is a 3-day event of 9 people to give it, and I consider them all experts in their various ways of where we're going, how to take it. I mean, it's like, you know, it's like Cheryl. Cheryl just finished her training at Ziegler, and you know what she's working with, and it's a really big challenge when you work with your life partner in business, is what we call it. Cheryl and I did a video a while back, and it had a lot of hits on it, that kind of thing. But it's like that. My friend Ken Warren, who's also a Ziegler coach, talking about how to set goals. And not only how to set them, how to attain them, and how to reach your goals. One of the things I asked Cheryl when she came back from Ziegler, I said, well, what's the overriding thought of a Zig Ziglar training? When you went through, and she went through an intense week, Greg, she started at 7 in the morning, and we went till 10 and 11 at night. I mean, it was really intensive. And she said what the overriding thing was that they taught us that you've got to teach people. You've always got to go for a little bit more and a little bit more. And they tell the story about Zig Ziglar. And he decided he was going to start running one day. And his desire to start with was run to the corner. Just run to the corner. And the next day he decided he would turn the corner and make it to the next mailbox. And he kept doing this, getting another mailbox. And before long, Zig Ziglar was running 5 miles a day. 5 miles a day.
Wow.
And this came from you just reach for a little bit more. And I think that's what you bring to our team. So is there anything else you'd like to add about this or whatever, Greg, before we close this out today?
No, just to say that it's really exciting. I haven't been this excited about work since my time at Copperfield, when it was just a joy to be there, because you knew that it was a company that was doing things right and helping people, and that's how I feel now. And more than anything, people go into education because they want to help, and I think this is an excellent opportunity. I'm very excited about it, and I think you got a great team already, and I hope that I can help.
Well, I'm sure you will. Well, folks, this has been Jerry and Greg talking, and we're talking about a little bit about what our vision is, because, Greg coming with me and adding to our team, and it's kind of like the title of this whole thing, offering a new and unique perspective and vision. That's what this has been about. And if you've joined us today, I want to thank you, because you don't understand probably what an honor it is for people like you to sit here and listen to us. It's an honor. Not only that, I consider it a privilege for people to listen to what I've got to say, listen to what Greg's got to say. If you got a unique thing to offer, you got a story you think would help others, let me know. I would love to do a podcast with you, and where you can share your visions, because I know you got unique perspective. I know there's people out there, they've got something to offer. So if we can help you here at CBC Coaching, let us know, email us, give us a phone call. We're here to help you. Our mission, we want to take your business dreams and we want to turn them into your business realities. And by doing this, what's going to happen is you're going to reach your personal dreams in life, and you're going to go where you've always wanted to go. And with that, Jerry and Greg say thank you, and we will talk to you next time. Please join us for future webinars. Have a great day, and I thank you once again for your time.